Veterans Day 2013, and I'm home all day with the kids because they got no school. So they have no school, I should say. Anyways, today I'm going to see whether or not I can remove. What I want to do is I want to try and remove the legs and the chip pan off the bottom of the lathe in preparation for an attempt at moving the lathe down into the basement. So I'm going to see how that's going to go. I was able to get it in here overnight, so it was all nice and buttoned up out of the little bit of rain that came by. This is my first really good look at the lathe in the daylight, and you know, I was concerned. There's a couple things, like I had noticed this seemed like it was broken, but now the more I look at it, the more I realize that this is a fabricated bracket to replace whatever was originally on the end here. And the way it's made is this should be loosened, and then this part right here is supposed to sit on top of the there we go, on top of the ways in the back here, and then if I tighten this down, then that's pretty much the position it's supposed to be in. I don't know what the bracket that was supposed to be there originally looked like, but this is clearly a homemade job. It's got a nasty looking weld on this side. It's just got a piece of that looks like a hunk of a hex wrench that was cut off, so that's obviously not original. It's dirty, plenty dirty. That looks like, oh, that looks like we got some. Oh, that's a bobber. Alright, so there's some garbage in there. Chip tray's filthy. Looking at the compound, this handle's not very nice. Condition of it, I don't know if that's original or not. And then the tool post, got a style of tool post here that you can flip it around, so he's got two tool holders there. Can't see who makes the tool holders. Probably end up taking that all apart during the cleaning process. The tapering jig looks like it's complete, other than the fact that that bar is supposed to be supported down that end by the correct bracket that's missing. But it's present, which is a bonus. As far as what we see over here, not sure what the deal is with this little ring right here. That doesn't look, I don't know if that's original or not, but it's interesting. It's got threaded holes in it, one of which has a small screw in it right now. I don't know. I'm assuming that's some sort of a tapered hole there. This, I knew this was all chewed up. This is clearly somebody's been putting a wrench on there. I'm envisioning a pipe wrench being used on there to rotate this, as maybe to help turn the to help manually turn the spindle, maybe during some, you know, setting up operation or something. I don't know, not sure. This clearly looks like it's an original bracket for the motor. It's got threaded holes in the top for the base of the motor to mount on. It's got these Allen head cap screws, which are designed so that as you tighten them down, they'll raise this end of the of this platform, which will pivot on this back pivot to adjust for the tension on the chain. So all the little, looks like all the little plugs are present for the oil galleys, which is kind of nice. Lots of times, my understanding is lots of times these end up going missing, except for this one here. I don't even know if that's got a Zerk fitting. It looks like some kind of adapter he made up so that he can, because it's a Zerk fitting, I guess he's pumping grease into that. I don't know. there's oil all over this front here, and it looks like it's leaking out of here when it's running. So I guess that's a common thing on old lathes. Got a micrometer stop. I think that's what they call this thing, which is nice that that's present in the little bonus. It's filthy. I actually thought that this thing was black in color. Now that I get it out here, I can clearly see this. What looks to me like maybe the original paint color there. You can see a little bit more of it present there. And definitely down here on the bed. It's scraped off in a lot of spots, but you can still see the original color there. I wonder why that's all scraped right there. I wonder what was rubbing up against that. The carriage seems to move fine. There's no threading dial, which is interesting. But I think someone had mentioned that there was a different method employed for threading on these machines. That being said, I'm looking at right here, this is a homemade bracket that's been stuck on the side here with a little gear that's meshing with the lead screw here. So I wonder what that deal is with that. I wonder whether or not that was some sort of a crude attempt to make a threading dial. I've already been looking at Aloris tool posts, trying to find a good deal on one. I missed one in local Craigslist down in Connecticut. Guy had an Aloris tool post with 7 holders for 250 bucks. And unfortunately that went right away. So I missed out on a real good deal there. Kind of funny that I'm contemplating, you know, spending that kind of money on a tool post on a lathe that I've never even run. I mean, I've heard it run, but I've never actually did any operations on it. So maybe I should think more in baby steps. Alright, so back to the matter at hand. And looking in the back here, what I see are what look to me like the heads of 4 large bolts that appear to go through the feet of the bottom part here, and then they, well, I'm not sure here what we got, because we got 3 bolts right there that go up. Question is, does this bolt, is this, yeah, that's a bolt. It's not a nut, that's a bolt. Goes straight up. So if that's a bolt, why isn't this thing on the top a nut? Does that even line up with that? It appears to. Well, there's got to be a way to take this apart so that when you do the deed, you can lift this off of the chip pan. In other words, if I raise the whole thing up and I take out those bolts and I want to just drop the legs, will the legs come off? Will the chip pan want to come off at the same time, which is not good. So I think maybe what I should do is there's these other bolts up here that clearly are bolt heads that thread up into the bottom of the bed of the lathe. So I'm thinking if I unbolt those, let's see, what do we got? We got 3 of them there. If we unbolt those 3, that'll free this end of the bed from this post or foot that sits in the chip tray. And then do the same thing up there at the headstock end. Wrap my slings underneath the bed, and I think I could lift this whole lathe, the bed and the headstock, off of the feet, the chip tray, and the legs. Let's go with that. Oh, I already got to scratch that plan, because this lever right here actuates this rod, which engages the drive. That goes to an arm it's got a pivot point through the actual foot or short leg that I wanted to remove. Goes to a linkage inside there, so I'd have to disconnect the linkage inside there, which is difficult to get at. Disconnect this rod on the outside to get the rod out of the way, which means taking that bracket off down that end and taking the bracket off here. I may end up having to take that rod off anyway. No, if I keep the short legs on, I should be able to keep that rod in place. There's a bolt missing right here. This must be an adjustment. I don't know what that is. Alright, I'll worry about that later. So I think I'm going to go back to the original idea of removing those bolts to remove remove the short legs off of the chip pan. I noticed that up in the front here there's a huge bolt. Let's see if I can see it from underneath here. See that big bolt to the rear right there? That bolt right there just goes up into a threaded boss on the chip pan. So that bolt right there, its only job is to keep the chip pan on the legs. So I think that's how I'll be able to remove these two and remove the lathe from the chip pan and legs without having to worry about the legs falling off of the chip pan and vice versa. Well, here's the bolt I took out of the bottom. This is only long enough to go through the leg and up into the chip pan boss. So apparently it has nothing to do with the bolt head that I see from the top. So I could have just left this in because this is only responsible for keeping the legs on the chip pan. So getting the lathe off of the chip pan is going to be a matter of getting those bolts out, which have square heads. Boy, I'm glad I had my nitrile gloves on. They're inside out now, but they're black. That was a messy, messy job. There's a ton of grease and dirt underneath there and oil on both these sides. I got all 8 bolts out. Toughest one was the one in the back far corner because it's behind that linkage bracket there and I could barely get the socket in there. And I needed to use breaker bar with a helper on because these were really tight. Anyways, they weren't seized, they were just tight. They weren't seized because they were buried in enough oil that they were never going to seize. So now, theoretically, this thing should be able to be lifted up right off of the chip pan and legs as an assembly. I just got to re-rig this in a way so that I can safely lift it. So I guess it's time to go wake up old Yeller. Let's see if she's gonna wake up and do some work today. I'm gonna go right to the preheater. We're not even gonna waste time trying to start it without preheating it. It's mild today. It's about 50 degrees. But still, it's not getting direct sunlight over here, so that engine block is pretty cold from the overnight lows down somewhere around 30, I think. Let's see, it should be nothing.